Hello and welcome back. It's been a while since my last official video, and I've been working on this for a while, trying to get all the information together and collected. And this week we're going to be covering the black goo substance and what it connects to, who's involved with it, and how it kind of connects with the things we see in the world today. So I hope you guys enjoy this. This is the black goo. Black goo, as it's called in the conspiracy circles and in the world of conspiracies. Um, I don't know if you've heard of this black goo substance before, but when you really get into it, a lot of people have a lot of questions about the black goo, and I try to answer them here. So, the number one question that people have is, what is black goo? All right, and the most easiest answer that you can give the people who are asking these questions is it is a form of artificial intelligence or non-human intelligence. And it goes a little deeper than just it's artificial intelligence because it's a type of communication with alternate realities and alternate dimensions. And then when you start understanding the satanic and biblical aspects to all these things, it makes a lot more sense that it is the collective consciousness of Satan and evil. And all of the people who sell their souls are assimilated and they are uploaded into this black goo substance as a collective, and it's multi-dimensional and things like that. But we're going to go through it one by one so that you can understand it and hopefully explain this to other people who may be asking these questions. So here's the black goo substance. It is the collective consciousness of Satan or evil, and it is the physical manifestation of the 369 system. Now, if you are familiar with my work and my videos, I would suggest that you go back and watch the a few videos that will help you kind of wrap your mind around this. The one of them is the two vibrational codes of our realm video, and that is where we discuss the 124875 system of God and creation and oneness versus the 369 system that is the satanic evil kind of system. And this kind of proves that whether we live in a simulation or we live in just this realm we're in, there are two systems fighting for control, and we see this in these two numerological systems, or numbers, or codes, if you will. Another great video to watch is the Project Bluebeam 5G Death Towers, mRNA, and the New World Order video I did a while back. A lot of this information is kind of broken down in that video, but here we take it a few steps further and really get into the topic. Another great video to watch to understand this is the demonic entities, aliens, and extraterrestrial videos, where we get into the different types of creatures and beings and entities associated with some of these topics. So maybe watch those first. Maybe if you've seen those, we're going to get into this right now. So the black goo is the physical manifestation of the 369 system. And if you understand how these elites and people use these numerological codes to almost as a marker or a calling card, they'll always use these 3, 6, and 9 numbers to identify themselves. And that is a good way you can identify people, places, things associated with this lower vibrational frequency is they'll always use 3, 6, and 9 numbers. So this is a molecule of graphene. If you've been awake and aware for a while, or you started to understand things like the vaccines and the 5G and stuff like that, this molecule of graphene is one of these major components to the wider operation. And you can see how the numbers and the symbols all line up to specific groups and people. And it's kind of the same things over and over again. And you've seen it on the back of your money. You've seen it hiding in plain sight over and over and over again. The same symbols and numbers and things keep popping up, and they're all hooked into the same demonic entities, whether you want to call them gray aliens or whatever you want to call them. But it is a major part of some of these things we talk about. Now, the black goo is the physical manifestation of the 369 system. It is a parasitic life form that lowers the vibrational resonance of all creatures it comes in contact with. Now, as a sentient life form, it can exist as a solid ore like stone known as the black onyx stone, or as in liquid form like oil as the black goo that we know. And then there's kind of variations where it's kind of thicker or thinner or whatever, but it's the same collective substance that we see. Now, this substance truly is the reason for the mass vaccination and the underlying cause of the pandemic. Now, evidence of black goo is abundant and seen in many TV shows and throughout movies, and this is a type of disclosure and also a type of warning, showing the truth to the people and hiding it in plain sight. Black goo in TV and movies. Now, you've seen this black goo in TVs and movies and in MTV culture and music videos, and that's a big part of understanding this is understanding what they tell you in TV and movies and how it connects to the world we see. So the first time that I saw this black goo was on the TV show The X-Files. Now, if you have watched the TV show The X-Files, there is an underlying theme of black goo weaved into the story. Now, the show X Files deals with unsolved or unexplained cases of paranormal events and government cover ups. The show presents the idea of a sentient black oil of extraterrestrial origins or alien origins, whatever you want to kind of, whatever you're thinking this stuff is. But you learn throughout the series that this oil is a technology that will be used to colonize Earth. And in the show, it's called the purity virus. In the show, this black goo substance. But the oil, which is the cause of most paranormal activities, creatures, and mysteries during the show. Now, the substance is said to have arrived on Earth from meteor impacts from outer space. It can lay dormant for millions of years until it is awakened. Now, when it is awakened, it can infest a host body and it converts it into a reptilian type creature. And then when the reptilian type creature um, finds a suitable place, it gestates and then will turn into a gray alien. And that kind of connects all of the three major parts of aliens and whatever you want to think about it. It's the black goose substance into a lizard type brill creature and then into a gray alien, other type of entity, if you will. Now, the secret government knows this and covers up all existence of it. And secretly, the elites have made a deal with these colonizing aliens to protect themselves and their families. And this is on the X Files show, this is who the cigarette smoking man works for. And then he goes to a group of people who are like the Illuminati, if you want to think of it like that. But it's like a secret group which is made a deal with these the black goo or the aliens or whatever in order to protect themselves and their families, and everyone else gets exterminated and colonized. So later you learn that these secret government people and the cigarette smoking man are working towards creating a vaccine that will stop the colonization of these aliens and fight this extinction. Now, many other connections are made between human cloning, multiple races of ETs, different governments like the Russians who did not make a deal with the aliens and are themselves trying to make a vaccine that will stop this alien colonization that's taking place. Okay, so you see on the show that they are constantly they have this black goo and it's sprayed in your face or it it gets in your face and it goes into your skin and then turns into these worms that then get into your eyeball, and you can see on the TV show when people are infected you can see the worms going around their eyes and stuff. And it's very symbolic of how um this black goo will turn into one of these vril creatures and they hide around your eyes and through this proboscis look out and stuff. But it's very interesting that the creator of the show, Chris Carter, before he even started making the show, went to the CIA and was read into all these programs, and they told him what to disclose to people and what not to disclose to people. So if you've watched the X-Files TV show, there is an underlying theme of black goo weaved into this story throughout the entire series. Um, and it's very interesting how all this takes place. And then they made a movie about it where they're they've made this antidote and they genetically alter bees, honeybees, which have this vaccine in it. And when they program these bees, they'll sting like every person on Earth, and whoever gets stung will be vaccinated against this black goo substance. So it's pretty interesting the themes surrounding this substance throughout the TV show. And it's very, very interesting. And, the X Files is a type of disclosure. It aired between 1993 and 2002. And then they brought it back for a while. But the underlying themes of the main show are kind of what's important. And they have shapeshifter people on the show and all these paranormal events and things like that. And it's a very interesting show to get people to watch to slowly introduce these ideas into their minds if they've never seen these things before. So here you see in this slide, this kid has these worms and it goes into your eyes, this black goo. And here you can see how much this black goo is in our TV, movies, and cultures and stuff. And then you can see this blue-haired woman, Billie Eilish or whoever, did a video, and it's just solid black goo pouring out of your eyes and stuff. It's really demonic, satanic stuff. And then we all know about Prometheus. I'm going to cover that in just a minute, but really interesting stuff how these black goo is in all these movies, and it's always an artificial type intelligence that spawns demonic entities and possession and all these kind of things. Now, I've also seen it in Star Trek The Next Generation. It's in the Spider Man and Venom movies, where this symbiote is a form of black goo that has a type of host person that it attaches to and then gives a person all these powers and stuff like that. It's very interesting when you can read and see the symbols and symbolism. And in Spider-Man, he's wearing this black goo suit. And then towards the end of the movie, I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the clip. The bells start ringing, and bells are a large part of. They removed all these bells so that this colonizing black goo force can get a hold without being disrupted. Okay, and it's in Megan Fox, and all these people are connected to this black goo substance. They've all sold their souls, and they will admit they've sold their souls, and they're all into Satanism and all this stuff. We know how bad Hollywood is, and we know how bad all these things are. And in the most recent Terminator movie, the Terminator was a metal endoskeleton with this black goo substance surrounding it. Now, I've also seen it in the Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves, and the final part of the scene, he's dying or something, and then Lucifer comes down, and he is just dripping with this black goo substance. And that's another key part of this is it is a satanic type of substance, fluid, whatever you want to call it, but it's always around satanic activity. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But he comes down, it's boiling, and then you can see he's got this black goo on his feet. Then they came out with this movie called Lucy with Scarlett Johansson, and she's an artificial intelligence creature that is got this black goo in her. And we know Lucy is a short version of Lucifer, and it all kind of connects over and over again. The same connections are made, where she's this multi-dimensional creature that is ran by this black goo substance. So the black goo and black goo symbolism is everywhere when you know what to look for. Now, the elites or the controllers must tell you these things as it discloses this information to the people and gives them plausible deniability. And we see this more and more throughout our realm or our reality. Now, another interesting part is everyone has seen the 300 movie with this Xerxes and King Leonidas, and this Xerxes is this god king or whatever. And if you've seen the prequel movie, or maybe it's the sequel, I don't remember, but it was uh 300 Rise of an Empire. Okay, and in that movie, this Xerxes guy is walking through the desert and he finds these black magic people, and he goes into this black goo uh, bath or something, and he is submerged in this black goo liquid. And then when he comes out of this area, he is reborn as this Xerxes character. And there is tons of symbolism in this movie. It wasn't very good, but the symbolism and what they're trying to tell you is all that matters. So let's break this down a little bit. You see this king Leonidas and the Xerxes character. And this just reminds me of when Cortez met the Aztecs. Now, whether you think Cortez was actually the resurrected Christ or whatever, it's very interesting the meeting between Christ and Lucifer and how that played out. And I've went into this a little bit more in past videos, how the story of Jesus was changed, and they invented several invented personalities to pass off the things that Jesus did, which were factual. And they would call him different names and things like that. But it's a very interesting kind of symbology and symbolism that they show you in the 300 movie, where this King Leonidas meets this Xerxes character. Okay. Then he goes into this black goo bath, and you can see the symbolism of like the Vatican. It's like a keyhole or a keyway opening the doorway into this black goo. And you can just see how the symbolism repeats itself over and over again. Okay, then he emerges out of this black cube, and he is reborn as this, you know, hybrid person of artificial intelligence or transhumanism or whatever, but he emerges out of this black cube at the end, reborn as this Xerxes character. And we've seen the black goo, or the, excuse me, the black cube symbolism over and over and over. We know what the black cubes lead to, and how the Jews all wear this black cube on their forehead like it's their third eye or something. And they're all doing satanic rituals and stuff like that. And it's black cubes and the black sun, and anybody using these, the symbols and symbolism and terminology, all is connected to the same things, and it connects to Saturn, and it connects to graphene, and it connects to multidimensional parasites and spores and all this stuff, but it leads to full blown Satanism and worship of Lucifer or their light as opposed to God and Jesus Christ. So, very interesting stuff that you can see. Okay, another big clue that I find that a lot of people don't really look on because it's not black. But in the Ghostbusters movie, the two Ghostbusters movie, there is a large connection to multi-dimensional creatures, the ooze that in the second movie is about ooze, but in the first movie they had ectoplasmic residue that also is a black goo substance. So in the Ghostbusters movies, they're investigating the library. They go through the library and then they see this uh, ooze leaking all over the place. And the ooze, you find out, like in the second movie, that whenever there is paranormal activity or anything, this ooze is a residual side effect. And the same can be said for the black goo substance. So they collect the substance, and that comes into play a lot more in the second movie, where they find out that it's a river of slime. They go down into the abandoned pneumatic tunnels, and there's a river of slime, and the river is all going towards the museum at the end of the movie, where the Vigo character is trying to basically possess a child through this black goo substance, which is the ooze, and that's how these creatures like I want to say reinstall themselves, but it's like a reincarnation where they're reborn through the goo substance or the nanotechnology or however you want to think about it into a living person. And, whenever paranormal activity happens, this slime is a residual side effect or of the occurrence. And that is very similar to the black goo substance in the movie. And it's called ectoplasmic residue, but we know it as black goo. Now, when satanic rituals are conducted, usually a doorway is opened to contact demonic entities and a similar occurrence takes place, a doorway or a gateway is open, and a demonic entities are communicated with, or they can enter the field. And we remember also in the first Ghostbusters, two people, the keymaster and the gatekeeper, must have like sexual relations in order for this portal to open. And then this androgynous satanic creature comes out of these pyramids, and it's all the same like Masonic symbolism of how the those are the traveler or whatever comes through this dimension, and they choose the form of the marshmallow guy, and they kill him at the end. But it's the same kind of stuff. Like, where would they get the ideas for this if it wasn't very well known throughout the Masonic teachings and the Jewish religion and Satanism and all this stuff? It's well known, and they talk about it um, amongst themselves and things like that. So here you can see images from these satanic rituals where they do human sacrifices, and it connects to the Knights Templar and Masons and Satanism. They sacrifice people, and then as the people are dying or they die, a doorway is opened in when the soul is leaving the body, and a demonic entity goes in. And then it's been said that these dead corpses reanimate into a black-eyed demonic entity, and they will communicate with the people in the circle. Whether that's like the pentagram on the floor, the devil comes out of well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. When they do these satanic rituals, the devil or dark entities or spirits are said to come out of corners and dark areas like closets and things like that. And the corners are like a focus point of energy. So they do this circle in blood, and the devil or the satanic energy cannot penetrate a circle. It can't enter the circle. So a lot of people, when they're doing these witchcrafts, they will make a circle of salt or something, and then they conjure these demons within the circle, and the demons cannot escape through the circle. And they do these pentagrams, and that causes a vortex of energy, and that's where these entities come through. And then often they will have a child in the center. They sacrifice this child through torture and making this adrenochrome type blood. And then these entities appear that they communicate with. And I've heard in Masonic teachings there are different entities that can be summoned. I've heard like a Yoda type creature is summoned, and also different types of gray aliens and demons and stuff are also summoned. And it probably depends on what you're kind of looking for. But in Freemasonry, they summon this Yoda type creature, and he is the master teacher who teaches you how to summon different types of demons for different types of powers or whatever they believe in. I don't know, but this is what the research is showing. And you see how all of the celebrities and all of these people, they all worship these demons. They all have their the same color schemes, and um, it's very obvious when you put these pieces together what these people are doing, how they connect to the Vril entities, and most of these celebrities with the Black Eye Club and stuff, they are members of this satanic collective with these Vril entities. And also, a lot of these celebrities have altered personalities or, altered demonic entities attached to their consciousnesses. And I think the Nicki Minaj person has a demon person in her, and Beyonce has a Sasha Fierce demon, and you got to think of like Garth Brooks, who's said to be a really bad guy in real life, like a Tom Hanks type character in the country music industry. It is said that the Garth Brooks is a P. Diddy of the country music industry, and he has an altar known as this Chris Gaines. And it's always dark and one eye symbolism and stuff like that. But when you put all this stuff together, you can see it very clearly. They do these satanic rituals. It's always the same color schemes, the dark blood red, they paint their basements red and do this satanic demonic stuff, summoning these demons, and then the people involved sometimes wearing the robes, they let themselves be open to demonic possession, and the demons are said to go into them. And they're always a fan of their satanic symbolism and satanic symbols, and the one eye symbolism, which connects to the vril and the proboscis and things like that, and the hatred of God and Jesus Christ, because they have sold their souls to the devil, to the collective consciousness. And part of the deal is they don't die, they don't grow old, they don't do anything because they're assimilated. And their soul goes into this matrix system where the body is left behind. And after they sell their soul, they have no creativity left. And it's just like a shell of who they once were. And you see this in like the Eyes Wide Shut movie where they edited out 30 minutes of the movie. What were they showing you in that 30 minutes? I have a feeling I know. I'm not going to get into that because down the road, I want to do a video on all the Stanley Kubrick movies because there is very interesting things throughout the Stanley Kubrick movies. It's like the same kind of themes over and over again. And I'm going to do a video on all of them uh, in the future at a later date. But as you can see in this Eyes Wide Shut, they automatically all know he's not a member because they can see in like demon vision or something. And they're all satanic like entities. They go to these parties, they do these ceremonies, they drink this ayahuasca and DMT and all these hallucinogenic drugs, and then they all see these entities and stuff. And you would know who was in and who was out. And that's why it would be a major operation to try to fix this because you're dealing with things that people cannot accept. So everything connects when you understand the vastness of this information, what it connects to, who it connects to, and we cannot accept it, we must fight it and destroy it. And that is the purpose of why we're here and why things suck is we've been lulled into such a hypnotized sleep state that we can't get out of it until we get to defeat these people and this entity, these whatever it is. The higher the vibration of the people, the smarter they are, the less power the black goo substance has, and eventually it will be defeated. So the black goo substance has a connection to just about everything evil that exists within our realm. From the crucifixion of Jesus and the fall of Tartaria and the old world, the release of the great dragon and the great dragon creatures and things like that, the Nazis and the Jews, and the New World Order. And everything that follows the pattern of the 369 system is controlled by this extraterrestrial substance, or it's an interdimensional substance. Once again, it goes back to your perception and kind of how you're understanding this. So, locking down the definitive answer is difficult, especially when the correct questions to be asked are not allowed to be discussed in a world created by the lies and propaganda of the 369 system. And the arrival of this goo substance can be attributed to several things. One, it may have been present when this great dragon was released. Possibly this black goo came from the crashing of some kind of a spacecraft, whether it be a black cube type device or a Death Star type device or some kind of ship or something, and it may have arrived here in a series of meteor impacts. Now, also, this black goo could have arrived when Satan and the fallen angels were ejected from heaven. They fell from heaven, and those were the meteor impacts that happened. And they're all parts of a bigger whole. And there's many parts to this. It just trying to explain this where people will kind of understand that it doesn't matter so much how it got here. It matters that it is here and it is a massive part of the problem that we have to deal with. Now, deposits of the substance result in the industrial creation and maintenance of our realm. From oil and gas to high technology, this black goo is contained in most Earth system, which provides a hidden control for those who use it. And the black goo in a liquid state is an extremely heavy metal that settles under the deposits of gold and under crude oil deposits. Now, this shows that the black goo was present within the Titan blood and the gigantic creatures of the pre Old World time period. Now, this could be the Nephilim giants and things like that, who were an offspring of these fallen angels mating with people, and therefore this black goo would be in their blood and DNA. Okay, and we'll get into that, how it connects to mud fossils and things like that, because understanding where gold and transition metals that we use come from, they come from the blood of creation. And that is a big part of the mud fossil research and why it is so important. And I'll try to explain this a little bit different when I get to the next few parts, but it's all part of the larger whole of our reality. And once you have to know everything to kind of know anything. And it's no point in just looking into 9/11 conspiracies or JFK or whatever. You have to get a general overview of every conspiracy theory and then kind of understand how they hook together and then go back and research further to have further understanding. So, the presence of black goo has caused a massive deception within our realm. all mining operations and the use of fossil fuels, why we value gold, why we're kept on a system powered by oil and gas. And if the missing pieces of the puzzle is this black goo, the picture begins to focus. Now, our civilization must remove the gold and remove all of these mineral deposits and things like that to access the deeper deposits of this black goo substance. And when the satanic Jewish elite or something who worships Satan, they must reacquire every bit of this black goo in order for this final deception to take place, or the final war between Satan and God. And that is the main focus of the rewriting of our historical record. What happened to this old world? Where did all the people go? Were we recreated through cloning and things like that, and not taught most of this information that you need to have to understand the enemy? And this is why it's such a major thing, and it takes so long to understand this. Also, you need to kind of think of, you are taught for 12 to 15 years in government Zionist controlled education system. 12 to 15 years is about how much research you need to do into these conspiracy theories to understand really what's going on in this world. And this is why they teach normal general public NPC people for 12 to 15 years, and now they still can't read or do math or write or anything. It's just a mind control programming to get you to be a subservient slave to this general collective of this new world order. So, our civilization must remove the gold and other heavy metals to access the deeper deposits of this black goo. And we must pump out all the petroleum oil to access this black goo substance. And this results in the created world we all live in and are a part of. And when understanding what is truly going on in our realm, these truths become clear. Where did the black goo come from? How did it get here? Now, discussing how the black goo got here, a few theories have been hypothesized. So we're going to go over those. One theory is that it was always here, and it's part of the building blocks of our reality. You have to have this countermeasure magnetic force for the forces on the surface to have some kind of polarity. If you're understanding what I'm saying. So the black goo is like the minus, where the creation force at the top, the light, it has to exist and use this as like a foundation, if you will. So that's kind of what the suns are rotating around, if that kind of makes sense. And there's something else to that when you understand the electron flood experiments and how the all matter is made of light, and the creation force has to have some type of a structure to hold on to in order to form this creation. And that is the black dark matter, or gravity, if you think of it like that. And this could be some creature, this black goo could be some creature sent to the lowest form of nothingness and void, which is this satanic energy. It's like the worst, deepest place you can go, where there is no light or creation force to come in contact with. If that kind of, I could do a whole separate video almost trying to explain this more, but one of the theories is that it's always here. It's a polarity force. You have to have the good with the bad, the dark with the and all this stuff in these multiple dimensions exist. And these are lower dimensions. And as they come to the surface, we also rise. And then we turn into like fifth dimensional beings, and they are locked in this universe forever, to wander the earth forever or something. So that's kind of one of the theories. So another theory is that it was released by Saturn or from hell in the form of this great dragon. Okay, something was released, and this could be like the Kraken, but some creature was released, and this gets into this great dragon, all the myths of these dragons, and the killing of these dragons, which would have been these sort of like a Nephilim offspring, if you want to think of it kind of like that. Something, aliens invaded, and there was demons around, or a portal opened, or something. At some point, there's record of people fighting these demons and creatures and things like that. And then the archangel Michael comes down and slays this dragon, cuts his head off of this dragon, and there's evidence of that that you can look up on Google Earth with this giant dragon in Africa that the Roger Spur discovered. So whether you believe it or not, it's a theory, and it's probably, even if you don't agree with it, you should probably know kind of what the theory is. So as they killed this dragon, which was possessed by this black goo substance. That kind of how you think of it, because supposedly these dragons have like a human type of consciousness. The same with like an elephant or dogs, kind of, or dolphins or octopuses. It's a higher intelligence that's more of a human type of intelligence. So these dragons were creatures like that, and it got possessed by these demons and then went around and melted all the old world buildings, and all this stuff took place. And then the dragon got its head cut off, and you can see where its head's cut off. Okay. So this would also, this black goo would have been in the blood of these Titan giants or these Nephilim, who were the fallen angels, breeded with the people and did genetics and made these Nephilim creatures. And how they made these creatures, it's like in the Prometheus movie with the tall creator aliens. They used this black goo to create a reality in their image, and all creatures and all, like anything that's on file within our known world, tigers and plants and all this stuff, it's all embedded into the code of this nanotechnology, which is this black goo. And that's what they use to like create planets or something. That's the metaphor of alien. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a minute, but this is one of the theories, is that in the blood of these creatures, this black goo existed. Was the black goo in the blood of the Titans or the Titan giants? And another way to look at this is, were the Nephilim creatures corrupted by the black goo? So this is black goo and the mud fossil connection. So if you've been following my research and following my social media pages and stuff, I'm sure you know about the mud fossils and how that really connects to this larger deception of what's going on within our realm. And if you understand how these mud fossils were created from this one of these great flood type events or any type of flood type event, they it's a large part of it, because there's always this need to mine into these giants and extract um, materials, whether that's gold and silver or the black goose substance itself. So when you're looking into this research, and you can see how there's this widespread conspiracy or cover up of these giant um, humanoid creatures, giant people, giant whatever it is. But it is a widely known thing. And the more you kind of look into it, the more you find. Another way to see it is, once you kind of train your eye to look for these giant creatures and animals and insects and plants and trees and stuff, you'll start to see them more and more and more. And the elites and the controllers, they all know this, and this is why they keep this a very big secret within their secret societies, organizations, and within the mainstream. No one's supposed to know about this. But a lot of these national parks where you would find these types of creatures and stuff, they don't allow hiking, they don't allow drones, they don't allow you to wander off and go looking around for these things. They want you to stay on whatever trails that they give you and don't go looking around because these things are everywhere. And once you learn to identify the chemistry in these rocks and stuff, you will really find them more and more and more. So, this if you're familiar with the Roger Spur and this great dragon, there's a great video you can look on YouTube, Roger Spur giant dragon, and it's this big dragon across the top of Africa. The entire continent of Africa, there's this giant dragon creature. And within the blood is where you get all these um, rare earth minerals and gold and all this stuff. So this is why Africa is so fertile with all these minerals and with gold and all these things because of the transition metals within the blood of these dragons. Now, the elite people understand this and know this. And this, once you kind of see the scale of these giant creatures, the deception of the globe kind of falls apart because there's no way these giant creatures and giant miles tall trees and stuff could exist on this small ball flying through space. And it kind of proves that our the realm we live in is a lot larger than people are letting on. So there's also this giant fish, and if you take a step back from the screen, you can really see the fish and the dragon. But these could be this satanic type of demonic possession, if you will, where these dragons are said to have like a human type consciousness or a higher intelligence. The same can be said for like elephants and some monkey species and dolphins and these people, these creatures or animals have like a humanoid type of higher intelligence, and you can kind of see how they can be seen as like a human type of creation in an animal body. Some, not all, but it's an interesting thing. So, was this giant dragon possessed by this black goo? Were these giant creatures possessed by this satanic type of technology? And the more you look into this, the more you will find these giant demon type lizard creatures, dinosaurs, they called them, but the whole deception behind dinosaurs is nothing compared to the deception behind what they're trying to hide. When people start looking for it, they find more and more and more, and then that kind of proves the less answers these people from science have. So here's one of these giant dragon creatures, and it's just folded into the landscape where people would just think it's some kind of geological formation, but we know more. So this is why they mine these, the mine into a mountain or something, is they're trying to access um the chemistry within blood, which is inside of these fossilized creatures, which whether they're the Nephilim giant creatures or they're just these giant lizard dragon kind of creatures. But it's a widely known thing. Moving on to this is Japan, and as you can see, this old drawing of this dragon with its head cut off, and that kind of fossilized, and then turns into Japan, and the people move in and colonize it or whatever. But it's very interesting, and the more you look, and the more you look into these ancient maps, you'll see this more and more and more. So next, I want to talk about, if you look into old maps, way older maps, it shows California being this island. Okay, it's completely separated from the mainland. And basically, this map would show you that most of Nevada, Arizona, Utah, all these places were underwater. And there was this massive, um, this body of water between the land masses. And that's, this island of California. So then this mud flood event would have taken place. And as this mud flood happens, and maybe the sea washes up onto the land or something, but this channel or this island gets plugged. Now, where I'm at, I'm digging and looking for these mud fossils, and I'm finding all these different types of rocks. There's like meat type rocks that look like fossilized chunks of meat. There is turquoise type rocks, and there is quartz types rock, and it's just always different rocks, as if it was chewed up pieces of creatures that were fossilized. And I went and I go, well, that's where there has to be some kind of a creature if this I'm finding all these different chunks and stuff. So then I go on Google Earth and it was like a light hit. I see this giant squid type catfish creature that would have began to be stuck within this island area, and that would have, landlocked this giant squid creature and fossilized. So if you go on Google Earth and look at the Central Valley of California, this is what you will see. And maybe you don't see it, but right in the center you can see where the eye of the squid is. Now you can see this, and this is what I see is this giant squid that would have, you know, swam up this where it used to be water, it got stuck and then died and fossilized. And as the creature gets bloated from dying or something, and it, you know, the the innards of this creature are leaking out. That's kind of what I'm finding when I'm digging and stuff. So these creatures would have been massive, 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 miles and miles and miles long, and just showing people how massive these creatures were. And then you look into these great dragons and stuff, and how, man was corrupted by this fall. And that's one of the reasons for this biblical flood, was to kill off these giant creatures. And then they became fossilized, and now we mine the transition metals within their blood. And that's how we get most of the building materials that we use today within our realm. And these creatures were widespread. The more you look for them, the more you will find them. And there's a great Instagram page, Sibs on Insta. Tons of these creatures. I mean, more than just it's a coincidence and you're seeing things. There really are ginormous fossilized creatures. Now, as these giant humans and animals and trees and all these things died and suffocated, there's multiple theories about how they died. It wasn't just they were flooded out. It's more like they cut these giant trees down, and then that caused a lower gas pressure within our realm, and like the firmament would have like shrank, is a kind of a way of thinking about it, which lowered the oxygen level, and all these giant creatures suffocated. And they all look like they have suffocated and are out of air. And it's something very interesting when looking into this research about how all these giant creatures are all over the place, and they are all buried in the mud. And it's just the scale of us. I mean, we are the Lilliputian ant sized people who would have moved in after the fact. And, the more you look, the more you find with these things. It's very interesting. But I think it is a big part of this black goo research is that something widespread corrupted these people, transformed them into, lower vibrational, violent creatures. And it kind of has some similarities to this, the Alien Covenant movie, where the ship comes back in. We're going to talk about this in a second, but completely covers the entire planet with this black goo, and a new creation from the black goo emerges. Very interesting stuff, and I think it's a big part of this research. The black goo crash landed here. So, another theory that we're thinking of is that a ship or a craft or something crashed into our realm. And as it crashed, fluid or fuel or creature, whatever it was, leaked out and caused all these massive deposits as it came in and impacted, and the continents. were formed and all this stuff, this black goo leaked out, and then everything, the people got killed or the people were fossilized. But that's kind of how this happened. And that's kind of like goes into the Thing movie, that there is this entity from this spaceship down in the center of our realm where the compasses lead to. Okay. So in the Star Trek Next Generation show, they are dealing with this Borg, and they come from this giant cube. And we know again about the black cubes, and we know that this was like an artificial intelligence, and there was a queen, and it gets into like the Borg people are like parasites, and then later in a different Star Treks, you learn that they can, pull all of this nanotech out of people and return their consciousness. So it's like a parasitic type artificial intelligence is this Borg cube, and they operate as like a collective consciousness. So if this Borg cube would have crashed into our realm somewhere, this could have caused the leaking out would have been this black goo. And as it crashed in, it leaks this stuff out, causing these deposits and stuff. And that's why it is like millions of years old or thousands of years old, but it's like tons of souls collected in this black goo, and that's what this Borg cube is. So if a ship crashed here, it may have landed in the center of our realm. Now, this may have caused a massive earthquake and the events we know as the mud flood. Okay, that could have been what happened. And then from this cube, all these droids come out, and that was the real cause of, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, which they say was way more advanced than just guys on horses with rifles. It was like super high technology going on. And then some EMP weapon goes off, and all of the droids quit working. And there's like pictures of all these droids if you go looking for them. And it's very bizarre that that's when they had to get civilization back going again. And the cloning took place. And you also can look into Star Wars, where they had Clone Wars and cloning and things like that. So if this cube crashes into the center of our realm and it gives off this magnetic polarity, and you look at the magnetic polarity closer to the center and you see like this northern lights and stuff, and that could be some kind of energy radiating off of this cube. Now as this ship comes in and crashes, and you can see where the center is right there, wherever these red arrows are where they find large deposits of this black goo. So it could have come in and leaked out, but um, that's one of these main things that has people have so much interest. The Nazis going to Antarctica and then going to Argentina, and they're going to South America where all this black goo deposits are. So the Falkland Islands, Paraguay, Uruguay, throughout the Virgin Islands. And this makes you think more about Epstein and what is really in these lower levels of the island where they're doing satanic worship and sacrificing children. Most likely that has a black goo type connection in the deepest depths of Epstein Island. So this Borg cube could have crashed. We know about Star Wars and the Death Star, and they blew up the Death Star above this planet. Well, if they blew up this Death Star above this planet and the pieces crashed down, and that could also cause these deposits. So it's a way also of kind of telling you how this happened through TV and movies. And once they make it in movies, it becomes not believable anymore, but it's probably way more believable than people think. So, tracking down the exact origins of the black goo is hard, but we do know it is satanic and it is a type of demonic fluid or technology, or it's a technology that was corrupted by another form of technology, if you can think of it kind of like that. So, because our historical record is so flawed and fabricated, we cannot track down the precise origin of the contamination of our realm. Now, another theory may be that we were recreated in God's image and Satan was removed from the heavens and the firmament was placed over us to like seal us in with the black goo contaminant. And now whoever wins will get their place again, like man who fell from the Garden of Eden and ate the apple, which is this information tricked to them by the serpent or something. So if we defeat Satan as this subcreation of God, we can gain back our power and our standing with God. And if Satan defeats us, then possibly he'll be let back in the garden. And the garden could be a metaphor for earth. And this is the main battle that we're all in. So it's very interesting that the more this is accelerated, the more we kind of see this. So whoever wins will control this realm in the end. And if the black goo Satan defeats mankind, the story ends. If we defeat the black goo, the firmament might be removed and we could rejoin the heavens in like a higher dimensional plane. And I think that both are kind of taking place right now. And maybe Satan gets his people and God gets his people, but there will be a separation of like dimensions when all of this concludes. So, going back to the idea of if a ship crashed here or something crashed here in the center, that is this strong magnetic force. They say it's a magnetic mountain. This Mount Meru is this magnetic mountain coming out of where the center is, and the compasses all point to north. Now, a strong magnetic force dictates the pointing of the compass. However, the directions could have been changed by reversing the N and the S on the paper that's below the magnetic force. Now, this is done by just changing the letters on the paper, erasing the N and putting an S, and erasing the S and putting an N. So if you were to travel in the opposite direction of the magnetic force, which would have been true north, that's how you exit the system. Where before the magnetic force leads to S, which is the satanic force, and you don't want to go towards the center. Okay, here is how this works on the flat Earth map. The N is the north center that where the compasses all point. So if you go the opposite direction, you'll end up exiting our realm. And you keep going until the compass like spins 360. And that would mean that you're outside of this magnetic pole of this energy or whatever it is. So that's something very interesting that we need to think about and we need to understand when we're trying to break down what really happened and figure out how this stuff got here, what does it do, and what's going on. So I think that's very important to kind of understand this theory and how that kind of plays out and how that could 100% be possible. It could be 100% possible. And I think the truth lies in combining all of these theories and understanding this further. Black goo and the alien connection. So, within the search for black goo in TV and movies, one of the biggest kind of things that we all our understanding from the type of disclosure that they put in TV and movies is the connection to the Alien franchise and Ridley Scott kind of movies with this black goo substance. And it's more and more evident when you see like Alien Prometheus and the Alien Covenant movies, where the black goo is almost a character in these movies. And you can see how the creator giant white skinned aliens are like a representation of these Nephilim, fallen angel type creatures, and how they kind of look like some kind of a humanoid gray alien type of thing. And out of this black goo, all these creations of science are within this black goo because it is a type of nanotechnology. And when the one spore of this black goo can transform somebody into a demon type of creature, and then these, you know, face hugger aliens will make one of these things pop out of your chest, and then a demon comes out of you, and we see these alien xenomorph creatures as these demonic insect creatures or something. And it's very interesting how if you kind of work this theory into the theory with the mud fossils and the giants and stuff like that, these are some type of weird nanotechnology demonic insect type creature. Okay, and they use the creation of humans in order to, as like a host body, in order to replicate themselves and generate these alien creatures. Now, there's also a theory that just like in the X Files, from these demonic xenomorph creatures, there a queen will be born, and after that, the queen will eliminate all the threats on the planet, and eventually, I think in the comics or in the story or in the lore, out of the giant head of the queen, one of these, an infant child of one of these Prometheus these white skinned people, like a baby will come out of its head or something. And it's a way of like colonizing through space and spores and stuff. And the more you kind of look into this, it's just like they're telling you the same story over and over, but the aesthetics are different. Whether it's demonic entities, whether it's these alien creatures, whether it's paranormal or whatever, but it's the same story playing over and over again. And they get these vials of this black goo, and all of the characters, the secret clone characters, the David character and all this, know what this substance is. They know about these visitors or travelers, and they know how they seed life on this planet. And this is the whole point of the David storyline is he's taking this black goose substance, reprogramming it, and making it a weapon system to fight against these giant white-skinned characters, the creator aliens, because they know that these aliens can bring this black goo to Earth and completely wipe all life out away from it. So their goal is to find where these creators are and kill them all off, and then they become the creators with the black goo substance. So moving forward, the David character, they find the ship in the Prometheus movie, and it's got all the black goo in it. And he gets the ship and figures out where one of their home worlds is, and he takes the ship back to their home world. They're all waving and they're all waiting for his arrival, and then he opens up the cargo hold and just drops all the canisters of the black goo onto these people. And basically, he's reprogrammed all this black goo to do what he wants to do or something. That's kind of the underlying theme. And as the DNA is dropping, you could almost think this is kind of what happened with this black goo substance. It's released from the air, from a ship, from the heavens. It's Satan being disregarded from the heavens, and this black goo rains upon these people in a cloud, and it completely destroys all life on their planet until, I don't know if it's just destroying it. I don't know if they're regrowing it. I don't know if what the end game of the movies are because they haven't made the third movie yet. But this is this major part of this black goo. Now, if these alien Covenant people were Titan sized and then they all died and became fossilized, you could see the need for another civilization to come along and mine through the bloods of a mass grave of these people and try to reacquire some of this black goo and try to figure out how the technology works. Now, another aspect to the Ridley Scott movies is the Blade Runner movie, where the universes of Blade Runner and Alien are the same universe. Okay, so in the Blade Runner movie, they have all these replicants that aren't real people, and there is like the sex clone and the worker clone and the military clone and things like that. And this is a big part of all this this operation with cloning, human cloning, is they could make a cloned bunch of people and install spores of this black goo, and this is how they would replicate and reincarnate or reinstall themselves, is through these cloned people or whatever. And it's very interesting, but the David character is a clone. And you know, are these clones without a human soul way more susceptible to demonic possession and stuff like that? It's interesting to think about. And you know, once you start seeing and understanding this and understanding what they're trying to secretly tell you, you'll see this information everywhere. And you know, in the original Alien movies, they even had um, one of these clones on board that malfunctions and is trying to get a hold of the black goose substance or the whatever is crash landed on this LV-226 planet or whatever. So also within the story, these clone beings are not susceptible to the face hugger aliens. Okay, so the face hugger aliens almost know they're a synthetic person. They're not a real creation, and the face huggers don't go on to these clone people with the white blood and all this stuff, the replicants, if you will. And that's like a big part of this demonic technology, knowing that the the only the real people with a soul can be corrupted. Your soul can't be corrupted if you do not have a soul. And most of these NPC people don't have a soul. The whole NPC thing is to try to trick you into giving away your power and um kind of going with the flow of everything when that's the opposite way you should be doing it. And you should always observe the masses and do the opposite, because the general public NPC people do not have the best interest of God, Jesus Christ, any of these things in their minds. It's very animalistic and herd like, and they just kind of react without understanding it. So that's a big part of this information. And, you know, if you rewatch the movies again, you'll see how the theme plays out over and over again. Black goo is everywhere. Now, understanding the satanic evil, which is the reason for all of the negative things we are forced to deal with, was in this within this reality. The black goo is a conduit between our realm and the lower fourth dimension. It exists as a parasite feeding off of the blood chemistry of man and lowers the frequency of all those it inhabits. It absorbs the light within mankind and begins to form crystalline structures and self assembling nanoparticles, which can be seen as string like fibers. The nanofibers connect and form a knot or a weaving. The weave forms a husk or a cocoon, which grows a creature known as a vril. And vril can be seen as various reptilian intelligent life forms. So this parasite then controls the organism it inhabits and drives them through a proboscis protruding through its head like a third eye. And this also has connections to the celebrities with the black eyes and things like that. So the self replicating creation is how Satan will attempt to retake all of mankind and destroy the humanity it has deceived for our entire historical timeline. So, if you understand this and really put this into use as a theory, everything will make a lot more sense. with these blood clots, with the type of artwork you see within the Wheelsburg Castle, and how these fibers, as you can see in the red box, the graphene molecules self-replicate into these nanotubes which form these fibers in the red box, and the fibers turn into this knot or a weaving, and the weaving, when supplied with the 5G and enough proteins within the body and stuff, form these blood clots that they're calling blood clots. But it is like the weaving of a husk. And if the 5G power source is sufficient, one of these vril type lizard demon creatures in the green box will be formed. And that's how you get the zombie activation and all this stuff, because the people will become rabid like animals, if you want to think about them like animals. But it's just like your soul and your consciousness has been removed and replaced by these um this black goo colonizing nanoparticle force or whatever. So it's in the vaccines, it's in the chemtrails, it's in the food and the water, it's in the medicine, it's in the air, and it does not become fully activated until supplied with a 5G power source. And it's everywhere, it's possessed all things. Every life form must deal with this, and it is our kind of purpose to defeat it. And this is how we reclaim the kingdom of Christ and free mankind from this satanic force, which can be thought of as this black goo. Now, here is the patent for the graphene oxide nanoparticles for cloud seeding and patents. And, it's in the chemtrails and all this stuff. I mean, they really aren't hiding that this is going on, and this is why it seems like more and more we're getting towards this final deception where all of this stuff is going to be really accelerated and pushed out into the open. Now, further standing into foundational knowledge is to understand that all creatures and people and all this stuff, everyone has to deal with this and get rid of it. It's very, it's hard to swallow, it's hard to accept, but this is the reality that we all have to face, is understanding that the people behind this are the ones who are always happen to be Jewish. They always happen to be connected to Freemasonry. They always happen to be Jewish billionaires and stuff like that. And this is a massive part of the understanding where they've tricked you for so long into censoring your thoughts, censoring your language, censoring your speech, to where no one can really escape what's really going on here. Black goo and COVID 19. Now, if you've been awake and aware for a while, you probably already understand the connections between the black goo and the COVID 19, which is the corona vaccination identification 19. And one is A is the first letter of the alphabet, and 9 is the ninth letter is I. So that's AI is 19. And you can see Corona 6 letters, and C is the third letter, O is the 15th, and you can see on and on, each with 66 and 666, because they have to show you these numbers and connections to this 369 system. So within the COVID-19, you get the black goo. The whole COVID pandemic was a black goo type of infestation event. Okay. And within these COVID 19 vaccines and all these boosters you took are these molecules of graphene. Okay, and the graphene acts as a building block that the spores of the black goo need for self-replication. So when there's not the 5G type of power supply, it uses these graphene molecules in order to self-replicate. So the graphene molecule by itself does nothing. When connected to the black goo collective, it can self replicate and multiply into complex forms or shapes. And we see this as clumps turning into fibers or strands. and then slowly into life forms. So the graphene is a type of building material used by the Black Goo Collective. And there are also connections to smart technology and 5G, which is a type of dimensional power source. Now, I also think these events must be dealt with at this point in time. If we wait too long to face this evil, it will win. So it has to be like right now, in this point in time, at this point in our reality, before we are allowed to move forward with free energy, free technology, and this great revolution of consciousness and the human soul and all this stuff. You have to get rid of this now. You can't wait 10 years or 50 years or 100 years. We have to defeat this right now in order to gain acceptance into the next level. Okay? And this is why we're all here for a reason. This is why we all supposedly chose to incarnate here, is for this major battle where God's real chosen people are going to take out the synagogue of Satan type of people. And it's the followers of Christ versus the synagogue of Satan where they're doing all this evil satanic stuff. So here you can see where the molecules of graphene have self-replicated to the point where you see these clumps forming. And that's 2 nanometers. Now, when you look at 20 nanometers, you can see the clumps forming, but you see the red line. These are the two of the same pictures, but in the background, you can see how these are these fibrous strands that have been formed. Okay. Now, the fibrous strands are these nanotubes of graphene. Now, how do these molecules know to replicate into what shape? The black goo is what's telling them to replicate into what shape. And it's all these different complex shapes that can build and all these things. But the black goo really is the consciousness behind the self-replication. Now here you can see a 3D image of these graphene nanotubes and what they look like and how they form into these fibrous strands. And there's a large connection to Morgellons disease. And these Morgellons fibers or strands that emerge from the skin. And, are they infecting other people or, I mean, we don't really know. But there is a large connection and that keeps popping up between this black goo and these Morgellon fibers. Okay, now there's also a connections to these nasal swab tests that they were jamming in people's nasal cavities. Now, when you look at these nasal swabs under a microscope, you see these parasitic black goo worm type things when magnified. They're in all of the masks, they're in all of the testing swabs. So they're jamming this back into your nasal cavity and stabbing the blood-brain barrier and implanting these spores and these fibers of this black goo. Okay, and it's in all the testing strips and in all this stuff. It is a wide operation which really connects to everything when you know what to look for and you know what to see and you're not afraid of this information. You have to face all of this in order to defeat it. You can't pretend it isn't happening and that these are just conspiracy theories. Okay, and it all connects with the numbers, the numerology, and the symbolism over and over again, and that's how you know you have to be aware of this. So here are the images of the um, I don't know if this is the COVID mask or the COVID testing swabs, but these black fibrous worms are moving around within these testing strips and the masks and all this stuff. So every single person who's getting tested, who's getting vaccinated, who's wearing a mask all the time, they're like heavily infested with these parasites. Now, I don't know if you did not do it, but I didn't get one COVID test. I didn't get one thing. I never wore a mask. I was the one guy in the store without a mask. I didn't do any of this stuff because I knew it was a big fraud. And it's important for some people to see you without the mask. I mean, now no one's wearing a mask, but during this time, I wasn't doing any of this shit. I knew it was a complete fraud, and I knew all of this was a part of the larger whole operation because I've been looking into this for so long. So another aspect is these Morgellons fibers, they pull these fibers out of people, and under a black light, they glow all of these colors. And it's called this lucifringe I don't know what the word is, but it's some kind of Lucifer light bullshit where these things are glowing. And another way to test is, they can shine a black light on your face, and if your face is glowing with these orange marble, they know you're heavily infested with this black goo substance. And you can see these orangish colors within the eyeballs and in the respiratory area and around the mouth and the nose. The things are like emerging from your pores, these black goo type fibers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways to understand this and identify this. It's just, it doesn't matter how much you prove it to these people. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't care. They couldn't care less about any of this. So healthy DNA is infected with the black goo and then self replicates and changes your DNA more and more until you become a drone or for a vril type demonic entity to possess you. And you can see the behavior of these people, these vaccinated people with the mask. They're very, intensely like possessed by whatever they're possessed by. They're wearing a mask in their house. I mean, they're really, really on board with this, the masks and all this kind of stuff. So this is one of the main factors in the New World Order satanic takeover of our realm. It's nanotechnology into transhumanism. And once they put all of these robots in you, they can delete your consciousness, they can upload your consciousness into the hive mind collective, and now the person that you were is gone, and now you're just this drone for one of these, a demonic entity or a vril or however you kind of want to see it. Now, the 5G acts like a magnetic force between dimensions. It draws in lower vibrational entities and creatures, as well as, different forms of creation into our realm, pulling itself into our reality to subvert mankind. So they turn on these towers, they pulse them, and the veil between realities or dimensions gets thinner, and these entities are allowed to come in. And a lot of this kind of information they learned during the Montauk Project and the Philadelphia experiment and stuff. And all of these, everything ties together when you understand the true underlying story of what the Nazis were doing, the kind of experiments they were running, the entities they were communicating with and things like that, and what the true purpose of all these 5G towers and stuff like that is. So there's always connections to artificial intelligence, which AI is a satanic type of intelligence, and they all know this and they all understand this. And just the general public people will never really figure this out because they're not supposed to. They're not programmed to think and be aware. This is only for the real human type soul people who their actions and their choices are what truly affects the greater whole. And if we keep standing strong and we keep fighting these things, they're going to lose. So here you can see the warning on the 5G towers where it causes heart issues, flu like symptoms, muscle and nervous system problems, and basically all of the symptoms of COVID-19 are symptoms of this 5G. So you can tell in what cities they're really pulsing these towers, they're activating certain people, and certain races are also more affected than others. And this is why you see certain races are really susceptible to violence and outbreaks and outbursts and fighting in Walmart and all this stuff is they turn on these towers to see which people are affected, and then they can track and trace them through the spores of the black goo because a lot of these people who got vaccinated have a type of a Bluetooth signal, and you can track them, and you know exactly where they are. They can monitor them. Here are these little microchips that they can also be putting into the COVID swabs. And they could jam this up into your nostril and implant microchips, which can track you, trace you, monitor your life signs, and all this kind of stuff. And that's why it was very important not to get any of this type of anything they suggested. You want to do the exact opposite of. So these smart chips made by Hitachi, and these were from like the 90s. So now it really is nanotechnology, very small things which have GPS, and they can monitor your heart rate, and they can monitor your oxygen levels. They can monitor all this stuff about you, and it's called this smart dust. And we know, once again, connections to smart technology. Now, they can be sprayed on you, they can be put in the chemtrails, they can be manufactured into the food and drinks. And this also, I think, connects to why so many food processing plants, you know, during the Biden administration, all these food processing plants um, caught on fire. And the eggs with the chickens. Is there, vaccinating these chickens or something, and this smart technology is in the eggs, it's in the food, it's in all this stuff. And this is one of the reasons why they had to burn all this stuff down and they have to redo everything. So, it does seem far out there, but once you put all this together, I mean, this is what's going on. There is some kind of operation going on here. Now, whether it's just the satanic people doing it or whether there is a countermeasure to this and there really is some Space Force operation to stop all this, we don't really know. And we can guess and we can but we don't really know. So, very interesting. The spores of the black goo can self replicate and self assemble, and they're self aligning. And this is a form of nanotechnology from an extraterrestrial realm or an extra or interdimensional type of a realm. And when large enough quantities is acquired, the fetus type shape of this vril can be seen. And that is said to be these blood clots, because usually the people die before they're fully activated, if you will. Now, when large enough quantities is acquired, the fetus type shape can be seen. When two volumes of this black goo are placed in the same room, they have a way of like communicating with each other, and this is where you see a lot of paranormal type activity with objects levitating and all this stuff as they're trying to rejoin into a larger entity. So if you take two separate volumes, they do everything they can to join into one volume of fluid or whatever. So this has a large connections to the Morgellons disease, and when these fibers have enough power, you will see how they turn into something else that they don't want to admit. Now, if you look on Morgellons disease, and the Wikipedia says that it is a condition characterized by a belief that parasites or fibers are emerging from the skin. People with this condition often feel as if something is crawling or stinging them in their skin, and they like dig into their skin. And this is why you see a lot of people with like on meth scratching their skin and picking their scabs and stuff, because they're fully possessed and just infested with these black goose spores and things like that. And they hear voices. You see a lot of these people who are on drugs, and they're all hearing voices and stuff, and that is like the consciousness, the collective consciousness, trying to communicate with them. Now, here you can see a person who got the vaccine on September 8th, and then when they get these vaccine boosters, the boosters are like mostly graphene that they need to self-replicate more and more. And you can see how the darker patterns really show how much garbage is within the system of one of these persons. And this is why, they get two, three boosters, four boosters, five boosters. They have to keep getting this in order to keep supplying the black goo within a person with enough materials to keep replicating until they turn on their 5G towers and start this final deception. Now, here's a slide of the pure blood, non vaccinated blood, and you can see on the right the vaccinated blood, the damaged DNA of a person. And now, here are the blood clots that they remove from the dead bodies of people, and this is how these husks or the knots form into this weaving, and then they use the protein in the body to create these types of what they're calling blood clots, but we know them as like a husking or a cocoon for these vril type entities. Now, everything connects once again when the missing pieces of the puzzle are analyzed and interpreted by those who can see the whole picture of this operation. Now, it is impossible to just stumble onto this information and have it make sense. This is why some of us must act as teachers to educate those who do not have an understanding of any of this information. And when you are an awake and aware person, all of this information makes total sense and you can see it playing out right in front of us in real time everywhere you look. And you can see the same types of people who wear the masks still, and the same time. I mean, it's just the same type of things, and you see it right in front of you everywhere you go. Now, one thing I want to add is that Robert F. Kennedy just announced the latest autism rates in 8-year-old children. 1 in 36 have autism, 1 in 20 boys have autism, and 1 in 12 and a half boys in California have autism. And California has the strictest vaccination laws in the country. Now, make of that what you will, but the numbers are set to rise as the moms who were vaccinated pass the sickness on to their children. Also, the vaccination of newborns being a major, major factor in this. And you're going to see entire generations of people become sterilized from these vaccines, and entire generations of people just you're just wasted away. You were sacrificed for the greater satanic goals, if you will. So very interesting stuff, and it's definitely something that people should be aware of. The Nazis and black goo. So if you've been following these videos that we're putting out and you're understanding the broader picture of some of this stuff, you will understand how a lot of what we're seeing today really originated from the Nazi Third Reich or whatever. And we know, if you've seen my video on the National Zionists, it is a satanic Zionist type of movement, which is these Nazis. Okay. Now, the Nazis were all, trying to reclaim historical artifacts and all this stuff, but we now know that it's not historical artifacts when it connects to this mud flood idea. And they were trying to regain technology that was lost from the old world. Okay. Now, the Nazis, who it was a satanic type Zionist organization. All right, the German people at the time all bought into this hope and change, and we're gonna free Germany from all this stuff, but none of that happened. Okay, it was mainly a mind control operation through radio frequency weapons to trick the German population into going to war and doing all this stuff. The same way the United States general public can be tricked into going to war with Iraq due to 9/11 and all this stuff. It's always false flag operations that gets the people all riled up, and then their Masonic agendas are pushed forward. Now, here you can see how the symbolism all connects. The symbolism will be their downfall because they hide it right out in the open, thinking the people aren't smart enough to understand it. But we can decode it, and we can show you how it all connects to the same types of Jewish Zionist control. Okay, now whether that's the transgender movement or the homosexuality or the pedophilia, it's all Jewish ideas that they're forcing on to the people. Now here you can see this is the National Zionism. This is the icon for my video. If you go and find that and watch it, it should connect a lot of dots into this research and how the general public NPC type people can be programmed in any number of ways to push any types of agenda. And moving past that, you have to understand that the National Zionist movement, or the Nazis, were a Jewish Zionist type of operation, and it connects to the Satanism and witchcraft and all of the stuff that these Nazis were actually doing at the top. Now, at the bottom, they claim that they're all Christians and all this stuff, but the Nazi SS which were the synagogue of Satan, were doing witchcraft and all these rituals and all this stuff, communicating with this black goo fluid. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So here you can see how the 9/11 type event is the same types of false flags, and how the numbers, the numerology, and the symbolism really comes together when you understand what to look for, and how these Masonic operatives really know that there is something brewing, and they have to send in their operatives, whether that's a Trump, whether that's Hitler, whether that's Napoleon Bonaparte or a George Washington or a Grant or Lee, or they're all Masons, and they all know how to subvert a movement and steer it into the direction that gives them more control and gives them what they need for their new world order. And it's the same types of secret societies and all of this stuff. But when you understand what they do within these secret societies, the truth starts to focus and it becomes clear. Now, a lot of people will claim that Hitler was not Jewish and that they weren't Freemasons. They didn't like Freemasonry. But dig a little deeper and you'll find that the SS were a type of Freemason society, and they were heavily into Freemasonry and the secret occult teachings of, you know, what these Jews are all teaching, which is the belief that Satan is the God and he is the light bearer, bringing these information to these people, and it's just misunderstood. But they're doing child sacrifice, they're doing orgies, they're doing sex rituals, they're doing all of this sex trafficking and all this stuff. So they're just lying, evil, lying, satanic people. And they will lie to you, and they will lie to you, and they will lie to you. And the people just don't seem to really care about any of this. You can prove this 100 ways, and they just never will see it. So while understanding what Freemasonry is, it is a satanic type of cult, and it is a form of, Luciferianism or something. But understanding how they perform their rituals, understanding the power of Satanism and black magic, conjuring these demons, communicating with these demons. And it's well known that these Nazis were in communication with the supposed reptilians, the lizard people, these Vril entities, the gray aliens, and all this stuff. And you can see how they're all demonically possessed, and they have the slanty eyes and all this stuff. Hitler was said to become demonically possessed, giving his speeches to the people, telling the people what they want to hear, and then doing a completely opposite sort of operation with that. So this Freemasonry is all satanic and it's all Jewish, and we know about the Jewish 666 and the 369 numerology and how it all plays in to this Masonry, where within Masonry, the lower level people don't really know what's going on. But once you get to the higher degrees of Masonry, the 33rd degree and higher, the doors to this stuff really open up. And you must be a 33rd degree Mason in order to enter the higher branches of Masonry, like the Shriners organization and the Jesters organizations and the Royal Ark Freemasonry and some of the higher Blue Lodge and stuff like that. So you've got one foot in the door, your soul has been sold, and once you enter that 33rd degree, you have to make a strategic metals contract with Satan and sign your name in blood and sign your soul away and stuff. And it's really what was going on in Germany back during World War II. Now, it really culminates when you understand the headquarters of this Nazi SS, which was this Wewelsburg Castle. And this is one of these old world castle establishments, probably with a large underground facility, connections deeper and deeper into underground bases and things like that. But when you really research this and understand what they were doing here, these Nazi SS, who all claim to be Christian, and they're doing seances and they're doing witchcraft and pentagrams and conjuring up these demonic entities and things like that. And that is a massive part of where they learned to do this. And then as the war ended, all of these Nazi occultists come into the United States and NATO countries through this Operation Paperclip. Now, this Wheelsburg Castle is where this Nazi party would learn how to refine and extract the black goo liquid from the solid black ore that they would find during these mining operations or that they would have recovered from old world archaeological sites and things like that. Now, they would all get together, they would practice witchcraft and black magic, they would conduct satanic rituals and human sacrifice, torture, sex magic, orgies, sex with children, and all this kind of stuff. And, all these pro Hitler people will tell you, they were trying to get rid of the Jews. But they're doing medical experiments and Joseph Mengele and all this stuff. They were doing really, really evil satanic stuff that all these people seem to overlook when you're trying to explain that, man, these people aren't good. They're the Jews infested Germany like they've infested the United States. And it's all everything kind of connects when you understand the missing pieces of the puzzle, which is like the old world, Tartaria, the mud flood, how this black goo connects, how this black goo infested everything, and the ideas and souls of people. Okay. Now, this is also where the refinement of adrenochrome comes into the picture due to these vril entities needing the blood, which opens the doorways within our realm or our dimension. Now, the adrenochrome blood would have been dripped onto this black goo ore, and the liquid black goo would like seep out or emerge from the fossilized ore pieces. Okay, then after World War II, the Nazis would enter the US and other NATO countries and continue their experiments under the flag of NASA and the CIA. And you really see how the white Western cultures, the descendants of Tartary, were really the number one target. And they can never defeat this America or any of these descendants of Tartary with open battle. We'd win every time. So the only way to defeat them is to subvert them and to destroy them from the inside out. And that's really what we see. And it is culminating right now in 2025 as this, the vaccines are full going and all this stuff. And then we're getting closer to this Project Bluebeam New World Order activation event where all of this really comes into focus during this final conception that we're getting ready to see. Now, on top of all of this, Nazis and NATO and the Operation Paperclip is where this Greada Treaty would come into play. And this Greada Treaty was, if you look at the conspiracy theories, it was a deal that Eisenhower made with the aliens or something to exchange technology, and all that the aliens wanted was like 200,000 people they could abduct and do experiments on. It's just insanity that this would be allowed, but all of these presidents and Truman and all these people were Masons. It was all part of the larger plan. So once you figure out that this Greada Treaty was not between aliens from another galaxy, but these demonic entities from another dimension, everything starts to focus and becomes more and more clear. And they would get together in their seances, they would um, possess people. And we talked about earlier in the video how the 300 movies have connections to this black goo. Well, before the King Leonidas character went to, war with Xerxes, you find out that all of these Jewish priests in the mountains who are using these virgins as oracles, communicating with the spirit realm. It's very similar to what's going on here. They would have these virgins come out, they would go to orgies, and they'd have all these sex partners, and then they would torture them and keep them up like MK Ultra, mind control in order to fracture their personalities in order to, you know, attempt to make contact with this other realm. And it's all very it's very hard to understand, but throughout this watching this video, it should become more and more clear what they were doing. Now, when you get into the depths of this Wheelsburg castle, you can see on the floor they've got this black sun symbol, and deep into the dungeons and stuff, you can see this demonic artwork that depicts, you know, these black-eyed, gray-skinned demons communicating with people, sitting on a pile of rubble and all this kind of stuff, communicating with these people, and this is a major, major part of what they kind of learned and how they brought all of this satanic culture and all these satanic ideas to Hollywood and other places in order to propagandize the people, in order to trick them into going to more and more wars. And let's go into Vietnam, let's go into the Middle. It's just the same type of uh, tricking the people into doing the will of these satanic evil people. Okay. Now, the next part of this is the Wheelsburg Castle, headquarters of the Nazi SS, and the mysterious Vril Society. And we know the Vril are various reptilian intelligent life forms. So, this Vril Society was a secret society within high ranking Nazi SS officers and personnel. And it used psychics and occultists, which would attempt to communicate with these entities. And these entities we now know are demonic. And as these communication rituals would take place, many within their group would become possessed, and they would they would start doing all this satanic demonic shit, and then also giving all these secrets of the universe, I guess, to these Nazi people. So while under the demonic possession, secrets would be revealed that would allow the Nazis to learn, mind control techniques, technical secrets for aircraft, UFOs, anti-gravity engines, like the Nazi Bell, and other secrets that they could um, only be obtained by trading blood with these Vril entities. And I'm sure they also told them the secrets of the flat earth, because soon after you would see the colonization of New Schwabenland. And after the war, was there a branch off? Was there a splitting between the Nazi personnel? Did the German factor of the Nazi party, did they separate from the National Zionist and try to go their own way? And this was the point of Operation High Jump, was trying to eliminate them and uh, regain them. Is there a breakaway civilization of old world inhabitants that they were trying to communicate with? There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that you can almost theorize what was going on and how this affected everything else. So these Vril Society people would use their psychics to figure out the process of extracting the black goo. Now, this would be towards the final years of the war, after the Nazis would bring their secrets to the U.S. during Operation Paperclip, when the U.S. and the Nazi SS would become the CIA and create a cover story of the space race to hide their true operations that they were doing. And within this Wheelsburg Castle, they found this cauldron in a bog in Bavaria, I believe. As the Nazis were escaping and hiding all of their death head rings and all of their stuff, a lot of these artifacts haven't been recovered until the New World Order will really get started, and then they'll reclaim all of their artifacts. But this is called this Wheelsburg Cauldron. Now, I theorize that this black goo would have been placed into this cauldron, and then they would drip the adrenochrome blood onto this ore where the black goo would ooze out or seep out, and they would collect this black goo, and the residual side effect, after the black goo was extracted, the residual fluid left over would be the substance known as red mercury. And like adrenochrome, how it connects to adrenochrome and the refinement of the black goo, it can be in a powder form or in a liquid form. And this is The red mercury was a large part of the mind control programs pushed onto the boomer generation, and it is and was a component in early televisions. And it would act like a paranormal device, bringing demonic entities into our realm and into the home of the boomer generations. Now, you could also theorize this could explain haunted houses and things like that. Is all of these haunted houses possibly had these old world TVs with the red mercury in them, and possibly they were left on for days at a time, where all these entities exit the TV and enter the house and cause all this paranormal events, like in the Ghostbusters movie. And you would see, whether it would be black mold growing, but the residual side effect would be this black substance everywhere. So, this is how our world or realm has been slowly invaded by Satan and satanic influences. It happens through technology, and by doing this, no one seems to notice or care because they're all under the spell of mind control and hypnosis. And today we see the same type of control and hypnosis through smartphones and smart technology. And SMART is an acronym for Secret Military Armaments in Residential Technology. So it is a weapon by the Zionist elite, the Masonic elite, the Satanic elite, the Illuminati, all these people, and they know how all these operations are performed. They know the secrets of red mercury, where it comes from, how it is used, and all the things like that that connect to it and connect to the black goo substance. Deep water horizon and the black goo connection. Now, if you remember this deep water horizon explosion, oil platform explosion, I feel there is a massive, massive connection to the black goo substance. Now, we know that the black goo can be found in mining operations, and they have to extract the gold and the silver and the metal in order to access the deeper deposits of this black goo. Well, the same can be said for petroleum oil. Under the petroleum oil is where they find this massive amounts of this black goo. And they have to extract the petroleum oil in order to access the lower deposits of the black goo. Now, this can be a major reason why we value gold and silver, why we are extracting these chemicals, and why we are kept on oil and gas for so long, is because we have to really use up all of this petroleum oil in order to access this black goo oil. And a lot of this really kicks into high gear as the first, second, and now third world wars are heating up. And it's all about the same type of keeping us on petroleum oil, using the our money is backed by the petroleum oil and all this stuff, and it connects to the sentient black goo oil. So this Deepwater Horizon was a high in ultra deep water offshore drilling rig 41 miles off the coast of Louisiana, dynamically positioned and semi-submersible. Now, the technology used in underwater drilling rigs rivals NASA. Now, knowing what we know about NASA and all of the deceptions behind NASA, we know alternative motives surrounding these operations must be questioned. And the indications these sea vessels are connected with such high technology suggest a communication with this black goo substance. So, on the morning of April 20th, 2010, an explosion would cause a freeing of this black goo, which was held under the petroleum oil. Now, we know that this is another ritualistic date, this 420, connecting to all the markers. And we need, whenever something happens on a 420 date, you need to investigate the connections. Okay, and look behind the scenes at what's really going on. Now, the Deepwater Horizon rig was owned by Transocean and operated by British Petroleum, or BP for short. Another coincidence again with the trans agenda. Satan being a trans entity, a man, woman, animal, uh, transhumanist type of entity. And whenever they throw this trans out there, there's always something behind the scenes that is working. So this oil rig explodes, and there's this big it's basically like a satanic ritual when they perform these activities on a 420 date. And we know of 420 as being most likely the resurrection day of Jesus, and this is why they try to invert these dates and have really negative satanic things happen on these dates of 420 and on 9/11 and things like that, because they were holidays or holy days that have been reinvented and reimagined into a satanic type of event. So, what was supposed to be a routine offshore drilling operation turned into a nightmare of events with continual equipment failures and malfunctions. The entire operation was turned into a satanic sacrifice with 19 crew members killed. On the morning of April 20th, which was a satanic holiday in itself, many high level BP executives would fly to this platform, arriving on the scene to perform a ceremony or ritual to celebrate 7 years of no accidents. Now, this also proves that something other than the official story that took place that day. On this day, the executives would take over all drilling operations, which should also raise a red flag for anyone searching for the truth or looking into what really happened. Now, we know that this black goo is a sentient consciousness that can interact with other volumes of itself. Because of this, the two volumes will form a magnetic bond or an attraction. This could also be an interdimensional type of magnetic bond or attraction, and would suggest that the BP executives would have been under some type of vril control themselves, or were under the influence of the black goo to awaken the larger volumes of black goo beneath the petroleum oil. Now, when this ritual was performed, the awakened black goo would have forced a reaction between the top surface level and the black goo held under the petroleum under the ground that they were pumping out. So possibly the executives had a quantity of black goo with them. They were possessed by the black goo, and the reaction between the lower under the soil black goo and the top would cause this massive explosion, which occurred that day. Now, when this big disaster happens, no civilians were allowed to aid in the cleanup of this BP oil spill. Only BP employees would have been the ones to clean up. Now, you can start to theorize why that would have been. It's because they weren't really worried about cleaning up the natural oil. They were trying to grab any types of worms or anything moving out of the soil, which would have been pieces of this black goo. Now, after the explosion, um, only the BP execs were allowed to do cleanup operations. Another strange occurrence was when the ocean of neighboring beaches was contaminated with the crude oil. Now, if there was two forms of the oil, one being petroleum and the other being the black goo, then a controlled collection would need to have been done. And this would shine light on the deception that is the petroleum industry, knowing they must remove enough of the petroleum based natural oil in order to recover the foreign extraterrestrial substance known as the black goo. And most drilling and mining operations are a cover for the retrieval of the black goo substance, and this is why our entire civilization must be kept on oil and gas to maintain the retrieval of foreign substances. Until large enough quantities can be reestablished, the world must keep removing all the things holding this evil consciousness at bay. Now, I also think that when a large enough volume of this black goo is collected, the final battle against God and the devil will take place. And that's when the activation of the 5G will take place and the Project Bluebeam will start and all this other stuff. So, it's very interesting to see how all of this connects when it kind of is explained in a specific way to where, you can see it and you can understand it better and better. Black goo, summary and conclusion. We have now covered the basics of black goo. Trying to understand the precise location to its point of origin may always be a mystery. We may never figure out how it got here, but we do know it's here. We know it is a negative force as it attempts to connect us to its collective and assimilate us into itself. This is how it regains creation by possessing us who were created by God. And we know it has a connection to this 369 system. We know it is satanic and it connects to Satan's chosen people. These satanic people are the ones who communicate with and receive orders or commands from this black goo substance, this black goo collective, if you will. And they are at war with God and the followers of Christ. Now, once you see these things and you understand the symbols they use and the symbolism, you can understand the ways they attempt to separate you from God and your connection to Jesus Christ. Now, this battle will be the final battle within biblical accounts, the final battle between the chosen people of their God and the true followers of Christ. Every single soul within our realm must choose a path, but by not choosing and sitting it out, your choice is made for you. And this is why so many got vaccinated and followed the word and direction of the government and not God. And we all know their symbols and we all know their symbolisms and we know how they hide all this stuff in plain sight. Now, is there a way to save those who are not strong enough to say no? And the information they censor is exactly what you need to know. And that's why there's so much censorship and shadow banning and any kind of information you put forward, they censor it and hide it because you, as the individual, must look for it yourself. And once you do, you will find it. So I don't think we can save the people who cannot even admit that they made a mistake. We cannot save those who blindly followed government and science. If the people who were tricked ask for forgiveness, perhaps they can be saved. Now, this may connect to the idea of the NPC type people and those who cannot be saved but are programmed to try to influence you into making the choices that you do not want to make and moving with the general consensus of what the controllers want for you. The NPC goals are to affect the real consciousness of those with a soul who were sent by God. Now, if you took the vaccines or you think you were subjected to vaccine shedding, you may have a way out. Also, if you have slept with or had sexual relations with a vaccinated person, there are numerous parasite cleanses and protocols you can do. The ivermectin is a powerful dewormer and a parasite medication. Nicotine is known to kill and disrupt the nanotechnology. So I would advise everyone to do their own research. Once you have a desire to heal yourself, the answers may become more available to you. And the internal light inside you will become brighter and brighter the more you accept this information and enter the fight for the survival of mankind. We can defeat this evil satanic force. And that is going to do it for this video. You can find me on Rumble, which is my primary channel where all my videos get uploaded. You can also find me on BitChute at Modern American Gangster, though I'm not posting most of the videos to BitChute. I don't know what they got going on at BitChute, but a lot of my videos do not get uploaded there. There's always an error when I try to upload them. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Mud Fossil Research and Truth, Mud Fossil Truth and Research. I'm on Twitter or X at Mud Fossil Guy, and my backup account is Mud Fossil underscore Truth. You can get my book, The Great Awakening, on Lulu.com, and you can buy Unit 1, The Search for Truth and Understanding, Timeline of Historical Events. Unit 2, Research for Truth and Foundation, Continued Points of Study. You can get them separated. You can get an e-book digital download, or you can buy Unit 1 and Unit 2 combined into one large version. And a lot of this information I've been covering over the past year is in there, and it's a great addition to the truth seekers who really want a hard copy of this information. If you would like to donate, if you would like to get a shout out or request specific content, you can donate on PayPal at mudfossil124875. Please donate as a friend or a family member, or you can send me funds through Cash App at mudfossil124875. Please watch some of my previous videos on the old world, and the fall of the old world is a good one. The demonic entities, aliens, and extraterrestrials, or the large documentary I did on the DUMBs, deep underground military bases, bunkers, and black sites. Also, I have good videos on National Zionism, the Project Bluebeam, the 5G Death Towers, and the Zombie Awakening. The QAnon and the Great Awakening video will kind of help you understand some of this stuff a little bit more. I did a great video on government experiments in time, space, matter, and consciousness, which you can check out as really cool. Always check out my Cooking with Mr. Saccavello videos. I've got tons of new recipes and stuff. I've been talking with Mr. Saccavello, and he is ready to record a few more videos, so that should be fun. And you can always check out my Modern American Gangster news and current events videos, where I cover news and current events. Please like, subscribe, follow, leave any questions or comments. Please leave a thumbs up, and thank you for watching.